Hi all, I have another superb attacking chess game to show you. This is from David Grosvenor, Leela ID 11131 against Ethereal 10.88. Fast and furious time control, 40 moves per 2 minutes with a 2-second increment per move. So the opening is the classic Ruy Lopez. So here is the end of the book. And funny enough, both engines now play a really well-trodden line. Knight f6, white castles, bishop e7. It's logical moves, really, from both sides. Rook e1, b5, bishop b3, d6, c3, black castles, h3, bishop b7. So this has all been seen before. d4, rook e8, knight g5, rook f8, knight f3. So that is teasing for repetition. But now, after knight f3, knight fd7 is played, which is the main book move in this position, it seems. So knight bd2, e takes, c takes, and this is again all been seen before this position. Bishop f6, knight f1, protecting d4 there. Knight a5, bishop c2, preserving the light square bishop. Rook e8, putting pressure on the center. Rook b1, c5, striking at the center, trying to weaken white on the dark squares. d5, knight c4. Now here's a slightly little nuanced difference. It seems b3 is popular, and only then playing knight 3 to h2. I'm not sure it makes too much difference here. This move is played first. Knight ce5. White really wants to play b3 here anyway to try and challenge that bishop on the diagonal sometimes. Knight g3, g6, especially with the dark squares now weakened. This is like a ball to the reds, you know, to try to get rid of this bishop. See if these weaknesses, relative weaknesses, can be exploitable later. So b3 seems very logical. So we have knight b6, rook f1, as though, yeah, there's an interest in f4 here as well at some point. b4, f4 now, knight ed7, knight g4, hitting that bishop. That bishop wants to be preserved, but now is challenged on the diagonal. So white is trying to get into these weaknesses. Bishop takes, rook takes, queen h4, queen f3. And if we look at this position, it has got a similarity to the modern Benoni pawn structure, where e5 would be a strategic break. At the moment, white's far away from e5. There's pressure on d5, but it's something to bear in mind. Rook e7, and now kind of sliding block puzzles from Leela. She's the expert in sliding block puzzles. Bishop d3. It seems very logical to get this rook into the game, either via e2, or f2 could be handy. But also the bishop now is controlling c4 a bit more. So a very nice move overall. Bishop d3, king h8. We have knight e3 being played here, which echoes maybe knight c4 is interesting in the future. And it also reinforces d5, so maybe even e5 is interesting as a sort of thematic pawn sack. Here a5 is played. You might think, well, doesn't this weaken the b5 square? If we look at this position for a moment, if we look at this, it seems logical, but what is it actually doing? Any knight takes, there's always knight takes getting out of any tactic there. So say this position is interesting, I think more interesting for white. White might not even need e5 as a break here and just play f5. For example, this is a way of playing from the advantage, just hitting d6 and being ready to take, for an endgame, because there's an infiltration on the f file, which is actually pretty unpleasant. This is just a fictional line, but this kind of endgame scenario is very pleasant for white. So anyway, a5, so black does do something, and there is a slight downside of the b5 square. Rook e2, rook e8, bishop b5, and that's exploited now. The bishop wasn't really doing that much on d3. There's enough defense on e4. We have bishop a6 here, just trying to get out of the pin. Maybe that runs into bishop c6. This is annoying. For example, this position is annoying. White's doing very well targeting d6 there. And instead, if king g8 here, then if king g8 here, then knight c4, this position is very nice for white with e5 coming. So this is very dangerous. Key move queen f2 to keep the knight protected and just get ready to evict the queen. So this is very dangerous, for example, like this. And then bang, rook takes e5, picking up material. So it's this position, yeah, with bishop b5, yeah, we can see that there's some dangers lurking for black here. So that line was in, you know, knight c4 on king g8, basically, and on rook e7 there's bishop c6. So, and in fact, this bishop is challenged with bishop a6 now, and that's actually taken. So rook takes a6, knight g4 is played, and now, yeah, it looks as though e5 might really be on the cards even more now with the exchange of the light square bishops. So in fact, black puts the brakes on this, and this does stop the queen from reversing back across that diagonal. On queen e7, we can see the power of e5 here. For example, d takes, f takes. This looks like a menacing position, actually. If we look at this, this looks really menacing, and a pawn sack could in fact further white's pressure. For example, like this is very pleasant, this kind of scenario where, yeah, there's huge pressure on black's position. Black could be crashing through like this. It's very, very difficult for black in that scenario after queen e7, e5 basically. So we have the brakes being put on f6. So is black snug here? Another alternative, you might think this is really committal. What about h5? In fact, knight h6, so the knight's not even stranded here. Say king g7, then there's knight f5 check, forking king and queen. You know, after taking, we can renew that fork. So that knight is untouched when it's hitting f7. So king g7 just to defend f7. If queen f6. If queen f6 to defend f7, e5 here, and again this knight isn't so precarious because here there's knight g5. Both knights are defending. Well, that one's defending that indirectly because if it takes, then there's check. So this position is unpleasant for black as well. Black's getting pretty dismantled here. Knight d6 forks queen and rook, winning material basically. So yeah, it seems this is a necessary evil to play f6. But now we just have knight e3 with an invisible but killer threat here of just trapping the queen with knight f5. So for example, rook a7, there's knight to f5. Well, either knight will do. Actually, that's not the case. I mean, there's queen h5, but that's the d6 will drop off. So this position, imagine here, then knight takes. There's no queen h5. There is knight e5 to save black's queen by counter-attacking, but then white just establishes a massive advantage anyway in this position with d6 pressure. It's just a huge pawn on e6. So anyway, so knight e3, we have queen h6 against that in advance. So what do we play here? Are the brakes being put on e5 or not? That's the question. What would you play here? Remember, Leela is master of pawn breaks. Is the e5 break on here or not? Would you play it here? 5 seconds to think about it. You might want to pause the video. Okay, e5 is played. Yeah, it is very dangerous. We have f takes. You might think, well, what about d takes? This just opens up even more really. There's a strong pass pawn here. On knight takes, bang, queen takes f6, check, and knight c4, nasty pin against e8. Massive advantage for white there. So that doesn't make sense to play d takes very much. F takes, knight g4, and this is impossible because of that pin. So queen takes, we just take that and then take on e8. So the queen is kicked back, and now f5, we're going to get this dangerous fawn pawn. Fawn pawn is going to be established on f6 here. Fawn pawn alert. Fawn pawn alert. Okay, a4 is played. If taking the pawn, then both knights look super aggressive. And in this position, queen d3 hitting the rook is cool here. This is very cool. Knight f to h6. We've got the f7 square here. White's got a big advantage crashing through. That's very nasty for black. So that's just ignored. a4. Thorn pawn is installed. Now here, this is really cool and instructive. I think this is a really instructive moment. The attacking player, if you look at a lot of Kasparov games, he or Tau, they get rid of the pawn chain around the king. But how is this actually achievable here? Because what can actually hit this pawn chain hard? And if white plays knight e4, surely black just takes on d5. So if we try and swing the knight into g5 to hit h7, there's a downside, isn't there, of just losing the center, and even worse, the knight coming to f4. Well, Leela kind of achieves the same of destroying this pawn chain here and just mixing in the downside as part of the method, really. The downside is incorporated. Leela plays knight e4, incorporating, just inviting knight takes d5, because there's actually a way of stopping the major downside of knight f4 here. Can you see how knight f4 is stopped and white can get to work chipping away this pawn chain in this position? Really cool play on both sides of the board. White to play here if I give you 5 seconds. Okay. Queen d3, yeah. There's no knight f4 now because then the rook's hanging. So the knight and the rook is hit. So this pushes the knight back, which means that this knight from a passive position now transfers to a really aggressive position from g3 to g5, incorporating what was, you know, losing a pawn downside. But is that a big deal? Are the downsides a big deal when we can hit the pawn chain now? So guess what Leela plays here? This is beautiful, instructive, attacking play, in my view. What does white play in this position? I'll just... so we have knight g5. If I can find it in my analysis. So the reason I can't is because actually a takes was inserted. Okay, and then taking on d5, pardon me. Same mechanics, queen d3, pushing like that. Now knight g5. So here, rook b6 was played. There's a lot of dangers in the position. If rook a7, there's actually knight h6. Both knights again kind of helping each other. Because if takes, then there's knight f7 check. This position, with both knights near the king, these knights kind of away. If we look at this, if knight takes f6, then this is just crushing. Rook takes f6 there, check, taking the queen. This is just absolutely crushing. So it's a really dangerous position. So rook b6 was tried, which at least, I guess, frees the knight from protecting the rook, this knight, and some potential variations. On h5, then white simply plays queen takes g6, threatening mate. So there's, yeah, it's limited choices for black. So the rook's just taken out of the glare of the queen. But now, you might guess from what I've said earlier about this. Bang, knight takes h7. Yeah, destroying the pawn chain around the king. So that thematic pawn break so far established the form pawn and also kind of weakened black's pawn chain around the king. And this knight maneuver, sacking the d5, is now, yeah, leaving very little shelter for the king. So king takes is played. You might think, well, what concretely is going on here? Well, queen g3 now to threat. The threat is queen h4, which is really, really a powerful threat. Black tries g5 to stop queen h4. If knight e6, then check, and an f7 check is enough for a massive advantage like this, for example. Crashing through. Yeah, well, we can take it to a conclusion. So if king g8, because you might think g5 is an awful move. Then f7 again. Yeah, it's that form pawn handles that. Yeah, in all variations here, the form pawn's really dangerous, of course, on f6. So g5, you might think, well, actually, doesn't that just defend? There's a quite killer move here played now, which maybe you can guess. It's as though black can't really do too much anytime soon here. And so h4, just to try and renew this idea of getting queen h4, this h-file. Queen f7 is tried. If g takes, then yeah, white's getting that h-file, and it's just forcing checkmate, basically. This is just, here, this is a neat move for rook h2, by the way, and just forcing checkmate. So yeah, it's pretty horrible. Queen f7 is tried. Hg, so we've got back this threat of queen h4, and that's trying to be stopped now with queen h5. So is that the end of things here? Because isn't black a piece up? Let's count pawns. It's actually 4 pawns each, isn't it? But we've got big form pawns. We've actually got 2 connected pass pawns here as well, technically. So it's 4 pawns each. White's a knight down, but this is pretty crushing because of queen d3 check, believe it or not. Why is this so powerful? Well, if queen g6, then we get onto the h-file again. We've just stopped the defender of the h-file. So f7 crashes through again here, winning material, winning the game, basically. What else? If king g8, then again f7 check, form pawn again. If king h8, here slightly different, queen f5. So that hits d7. We've got 2 connected pass pawns, and we've also got this h-file to play on with rook lift. So knight f8, rook e3 with the threat of rook h3, and this is just the killer. So rook h3, winning the queen, winning the game, basically. So yeah, without the king's shelter, black is liable to lose lots more material, like the queen goes first, it seems. So black tried e4. This is very desperate, basically losing. Rook takes e4. It doesn't really help matters. This very feeble rook e6, it doesn't do anything. Basically, rook takes, and the game ended here. You might think, well, why was rook e6 played? This is just crazy. If if rook takes e4 takes queen g6, there's queen e7 check here. And again, rook f3, this rook left for rook h3. For example, check, it's hopeless. Yeah, rook h3 is going to come, and it's just devastating. So yeah, I'll take you to the game end position where the ridiculous rook e6 was played. Here, the game was ended here in white's favour. Yeah, it seems as though I'm reminded actually of Penrose against Tal. There was a thematic e5 break, which really caught my attention in the Oxford like Companions chess. They gave this example Penrose game in the Benoni pawn structure, and it made a really big impression on me. The e5 pawn break, believe it or not, in the modern Benoni pawn structure. I like the aesthetics behind pawn breaks. Maybe some of you do as well. Please let me know if you like the aesthetics of pawn breaks. But particularly against Benoni, it's thought to be a little bit unstable because of the e5 break. And we kind of got that kind of situation from the Ruy Lopez in this variation. We kind of got that Benoni pawn formation. And the way Leela played it, weakening the diagonal first, then getting that pawn break in at the right time. But what was really nice was getting this knight from a seemingly passive position to being relevant to destroying the pawn skin around the king. After the skin's removed, yeah, it's the king's much more of a liability. So this by sacking the d5 pawn, queen d3, key move to drive the knight back. Otherwise, there was nuisance knight f4s, knight driven back, and it stayed there for the rest of the game. And then white just had a shot, just taking out a very important pawn. And it seems after that, yeah, the 2 connected pass pawns and the threat of f7 in many variations were absolutely crushing. So Leela, to me, is really totally an ideal player to watch. to be honest, I don't think I've said this before, but I absolutely love well-timed pawn breaks. You might not have got that, but I'm telling you now, I love pawn breaks. Pawns are the soul of chess for me. This is a very, very soulful game, very well-timed e5, and a very nice pawn sack of d5 to just make sure the knight's not interfering with anything before swiping. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as me. Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks so much.